Is the NFL ready for AI? One team's already betting on it. We're halfway through the baseball season and already 2 lessons can be learned, plus plenty of winners at the NBA draft, but one big loser. All that and a whole lot more right now on Gordon Damer on Sports. All right, welcome in. It is a fresh edition of Gordon Damer on Sports. We have a jam-packed episode today, but before any of it, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button. We have some really fun episodes coming up in the near future, so make sure you subscribe and don't miss a thing. Also, my website is up and running, gordondamer.com. You can sign up there for my free newsletter. Give it a look. Let me know what you think. Again, it is gordondamer.com. All right, so today we've reached the halfway point of the baseball season. I think there are some important lessons that we can look at now, especially as it relates to the historic free agent class from this past offseason. Plus, the question in baseball everyone is asking about the baseballs themselves. We also have a very public incident between another fan and an athlete, and we'll touch on, so I think, some important questions that I have not heard brought up. Also, the NBA draft is in the books. Everyone has their draft grades. I only have one draft grade, and it's for the biggest loser of all the 30 teams. But let's begin with the future, because the future is now. Yeah, let's talk about artificial intelligence in the NFL. It's the kind of headline that sounds like something out of a movie trailer, right? The machines have taken over. But, you know, for all the moves made this offseason, from Aaron Rodgers to Jamar Chase, the most interesting one really didn't get that many headlines. It came from the Las Vegas Raiders. And no, it was not the hiring of Pete Carroll. It came when Carroll hired Ryan Pagnetti. You might be saying, who's Ryan Pagnetti exactly? Well, he is the first ever AI coordinator. Officially, his title is head coach research specialist. But let's be real, his job is AI. He is the first guy in the league tasked with formally integrating artificial intelligence into every layer of a football operation. The oldest coach in football is bringing in AI like it's the next frontier. He recently said, quote, "Everything you can think of is possible right now. If you're not curious, you're not growing," which sounds good, sounds bold, sounds futuristic. But before we start bowing down to the great algorithm in the sky, I think we should hit pause and take a breath, because for all the buzz and the bravado, the real impact of AI in football today is a little murkier. So let's begin with the basics. What can AI actually do in an NFL building right now in 2025? Well, it's kind of hard to know completely because teams don't let that kind of information out the door. It's proprietary, right? But so as far as we know, it turns out it can do quite a bit, but also not nearly as much as some headlines would have you believe. Right now, AI is largely being used during the week, not on Sundays. It's analyzing film. It's identifying pre-snap defensive coverages and generating some game plans and call sheets. Think of it like the world's most efficient assistant coach who doesn't sleep, doesn't need any coffee, can run through 1,200 hours of game film in the time it takes you to microwave some popcorn. Research at this year's NFL Big Data Bowl showed that AI models could identify defensive coverages with nearly 90% accuracy based on pre-snap alignment. So that's huge, especially for preparation. But here's the catch. While it can tell you what you're seeing, it still can't tell you why it's happening or what it means situationally. It certainly doesn't see fatigue. It doesn't read body language. It can't sense momentum. Right now, AI is currently a glorified pattern recognition system. It's excellent at identifying trends and flagging inconsistencies and comparing data. But when it comes to actually calling plays or managing people, it's still just a tool. A really good tool, a smart tool, but it's not a coach. Now, Ryan Pagnetti believes that some coaching roles might be replaced entirely in the future by AI, and he's not wrong to consider it. What we've learned about professional sports, that more than being a league or a sport, owners look at it as a business. So if they can trim expenses anywhere, they will, especially at the entry level. Assistant coaches who currently grind through hours of film and tag every snap and log every blitz pickup, those tasks probably could almost be entirely automated. But let's be clear, AI can't replace what matters most in a head coach. It doesn't lead, it doesn't inspire, it can't hold a locker room together. Coaching is about a whole lot more than that, and those aren't downloadable skills. So yes, roles may evolve, AI may do more behind the scenes legwork, but coaching is still and always will be a human profession at its core, and the NFL, as everyone knows, is a coaching league. Now, analytics was supposed to make the game smarter, and to be fair, it did, but it also, in some cases, I feel like give coaches and organizations some cover. When a play doesn't work, well, the numbers told us. Now imagine that, but amplified by AI. The coach doesn't even need to reference the analytics team. He can just point to the AI. The system ran the model. It's like the perfect scapegoat. And I think this is where things get a little dicey because fans already push back on the nerdification of sports. They don't want to hear about win probabilities. They want to see actual wins. So in some ways, AI is already being framed as a savior, but it's also a villain at the same time. Used properly, I think AI could add some context. Misused, though, it becomes a crutch. It could let coaches dodge accountability. I feel like it could give ownership someone to blame when the season goes sideways. It's a tool, but tools shouldn't make decisions. That's a problem a lot of baseball teams run into with analytics. Now, I will give it credit where credit is due. AI is already making football safer and smarter in a way that matters to every player on the field. Wearables, biometric tracking allows teams to monitor heart rates and movement patterns, acceleration and fatigue in real time. AI can parse that data to flag injury risks before they happen. That's stuff you never would see with the naked eye, but AI can. That could lead to smarter rest decisions, better injury prevention, and in theory, longer careers. This is where I think AI is more than a buzzword. It can actually be useful in real time. And AI is already helping with officiating, which God knows in the NFL could use it. The league is rolling out Sony's Hawkeye technology using 8K cameras and computer vision to mark first downs more accurately. No more chains. No more guessing where the guy was to spot the football. No more drives turning on bad spots. Add in replay reviews powered by AI, tracking body parts and forward progress and inbounds versus out of bounds. And I think you've got a path to better, faster officiating. Everybody wants the calls to be right, but we don't want to take 20 minutes out of the game to get them right. So sure, there'll still be controversy, but there'll be fewer blown calls, which means more credibility, and I think that's good for everyone. AI might not be able to coach a football team, but I get the feeling it might be able to spot the ball more efficiently and effectively than a 65-year-old running down the sidelines. One area I'm not looking forward to it, though, is us as fans. AI has already seeped into broadcasts with next-gen stats and player speeds and win probabilities and route trees drawn in real time. It's all part of the new viewing experience, and I gotta be honest, I feel like I'm on the edge of a stat overload. AI gives us more information, but sometimes more information is too much information. I don't even know what I'm supposed to be learning from some of the information sometimes. And it feels like trying to drink water out of a fire hose. We've gone from enjoying the game to being bombarded by data. In moderation, it's interesting, but the line between interesting and exhausting is a thin one. And broadcasts seem to think that the answer is always more stats, more numbers, more graphs. Fans do not tune in for spreadsheets. They tune in for the games and the drama and the rivalries and the big plays. So used right, stats and AI-generated insights might be able to illuminate the story in a special way. More often, though, I feel like they'll use it wrong and just bury us under a pile of decimal points. Hopefully I'm wrong, and hopefully things slow down. And, the numbers are the key numbers, and they give us some clarity, not just clutter. Because in the end, watching football is still about feeling the game, not about calculating the game. Nobody told me there was going to be any math. So there's a ton of talk about AI and how it's going to change everything, even sports. But I think trying to foresee how it will change sports is a bit risky at this point. Predicting the future is a bit risky. As a kid, we were told to imagine the future, and what did it look like? Flying cars buzzing over the skyline and robot butlers serving breakfast and moon vacations. That was the forecast, and yet here we are in 2025 still stuck in traffic. But here's the twist. No one predicted the real revolution. No one said one day you'll carry a device in your pocket that gives you the power to take photos and navigate everywhere and access the entire knowledge of the known universe instantly. So yeah, flying cars never quite got off the ground, but a smartphone did, and now basically it's an extension of who we are. That's why I always approach future forecasts, especially in sports, with a healthy dose of skepticism, because there are just too many variables. There's too much unpredictability. People, emotions, money, injury, egos, it's all part of the equation, and none of it fits neatly into an algorithm. So when we talk about artificial intelligence and coaching in the NFL, or analytics predicting the perfect play, or some new technology changing the game forever, maybe it will, or maybe it will go the way of flying cars. Great idea that never really takes off. The truth is, the future never shows up the exact way you expect it, and that's what makes it worth watching. All right, so this next topic is one we have talked about before. I had not planned to revisit it again, but the incidents just keep popping up, and it has to do with fan interactions with players. And it feels like anytime you hear one of these stories, you read about it and you think, boy, that's awful. It doesn't get any worse than that. And then another incident happens and it's worse than the previous one. So right now we're seeing definitely a rise in just downright nasty, disrespectful, and cruel behavior from certain fans towards players. And it's gone beyond, the usual jeering or heckling you might hear at a game. And it's crossed into something really ugly, something that has nothing to do with sportsmanship and nothing to do with really just basic human decency. So this week we got another painful reminder of just how bad it's gotten. And again, this feels like a new low, but who knows, maybe in a week or two, we'll have a new low. So by now you've probably seen the incident involving Ketel Marte, the infielder for the Diamondbacks. During a game in Chicago against the White Sox, Marte was visibly shaken after a fan yelled something at him during his at-bat. Now, we don't know exactly what was said, and that's part of the challenge here, without knowing the exact words or the meaning or whatnot. It's tough to say for sure whether the punishment was totally justified or if things were misinterpreted or misheard, but it seemed to do something with Marte's deceased mom. And it was certainly bad enough that the team's manager, Torey Lovullo, and the bench coach, Jeff Bannister, had security step in and remove the fan from the ballpark. And that fan not just banned that day, he has been banned indefinitely, which definitely makes it seem like it must have been something horrible. But what happened next was even worse. Marte was breaking down in tears on the field, and Lovullo, seeing what was going on, came out during a pitching change to comfort his player. Now, it was back in 2017 when Marte was still just 23 years old that his mother was tragically killed in a car accident. 2017, that was a special year for Marte. He had promised his mom he was going to hit 10 home runs, and that was something that they talked about when he used to play softball when he was a kid. And when he reached that number, they shared an emotional phone call that night, and then the very next day, she passed away. And look, this is something that happened back in 2017, but obviously, as anyone who has lost a parent or lost a mom knows, that wound does not heal. So when a fan crosses the line and targets someone like Marte, someone who's already dealing with that grief, it's time to ask ourselves, what are we doing? And the overwhelming reaction has been against the fan. So this is not something that is even debatable. But of course, this is not just an isolated incident. Earlier this season, Red Sox outfielder Jarren Duran faced an incident where a fan allegedly heckled him about his mental health struggles. And this is a guy who's been incredibly open that he attempted suicide back in 2022 and something he's talked about honestly and bravely, a topic that most people would shy away from. And yet here's a fan in Cleveland who thought that that would be fair game to use against a player yelling it from the stands. So think about that for a second. A guy puts himself out there and shares something deeply personal, hoping that maybe it will help someone else, and instead a fan uses it as a weapon to try to get under his skin. And this is not just some fringe issue or an isolated incident. Unfortunately, as we've talked about before, this has become more common. So you have to ask yourself, what is driving this ugliness? So in the past, I brought up the impact of legalized sports gambling. Obviously, that is not part of these two incidents, but I think there's no denying since betting on games became more accessible and mainstream, players have noticed a huge change in how fans treat them, especially on social media. Many players say they get flooded with angry messages, demanding money back, sometimes downright threatening messages from people who lost bets. One example I came across this past week, the Twins pitcher Bailey Ober had a really bad outing against the Rangers earlier this season. He gave up 7 runs in a blowout loss. And someone created an anonymous social media account and then sent threatening messages directly to Ober's wife even before the game was over. Now, the message was vague, but clearly disturbing. So before Ober had even finished the game, his wife reached out to the Twins director of security. He got involved with MLB's security and cybersecurity teams. But think about all the things that are going on here. And Ober says that this kind of thing, unfortunately, is pretty common. So it's not just Ober, it's not just Marte. Several players have reported getting death threats or serious harassment, sometimes even feeling the need to get additional security at times. So it's clear players feel the pressure, and it's no secret anymore that legalized sports betting has changed the atmosphere around baseball. So then the next question to me is, How do leagues protect players from this kind of abuse? And honestly, it's kind of complicated. It's almost impossible to be completely proactive, right? Teams and stadiums can make sure everyone knows the rules about fan interactions when they come in, but no matter how many times you spell it out, some people just want to be jerks, right? And maybe that's the case in Chicago. I do think where teams should be more aggressive is in the enforcement, banning people who behave badly, not just for the game, not just once, but for good. These are fans who clearly can't handle the responsibility of having a good time without crossing the line. And thankfully, with technology and security teams now, it's easier than ever to identify and track down the offenders. Teams should make an example of that kind of behavior and let people know that kind of behavior is not going to be tolerated. So this isn't a new problem. It's not exclusive to baseball. We've seen it in other sports too, especially the NBA. But it feels like baseball's long games and the close proximity between players and fans, plus the rise of social media, have made it specifically vulnerable. So what's the takeaway here? Well, we don't know what was said to Ketel Marte in Chicago, and without knowing the full story, it's hard to judge the punishment or the severity. Was alcohol a factor? I have no idea. And this could just be a jerk being a jerk, or it could be some kind of misunderstanding. But the fact that the player was brought to tears on the field, and not because of a bad pitch or a bad call, but because of fan abuse, should make every fan pause. Fans have to be better than that. Because if this is the culture we want, where fans weaponize mental health struggles and personal losses to get cheap reactions, then the people who lose out here at the end of the day are the fans themselves, because athletes will eventually be less likely to interact with fans, to engage or build connections. And that's kind of what makes sports special. And if this is the kind of treatment that they receive from fans, who exactly can blame them? Then there's another issue for Major League Baseball, and it is the actual baseball themselves. Stop me if you've heard this one before, but MLB is playing with a baseball this year that's acting differently. Now, if that sounds familiar, it should, because we've been down this road again and again and again. According to a recent study by The Athletic, fly balls in 2025 are traveling, on average, 4 feet shorter than they did last season. Now, that might not sound like a lot, but it is. That's the difference between warning track power and a go-ahead home run. And when we're talking about balls hit in the air, inches matter, never mind feet. Now, baseball, in fairness, confirmed the findings, but of course said there's been no intentional change to the baseball, and they reassured everyone that the balls, quote-unquote, remain within specifications. And that's where the alarm bells should go off, because the phrase within specifications has become kind of a get-out-of-jail-free card for Major League Baseball. It does not mean that the balls are the same. It means that the allowable variance in how they're made is so large that almost anything could happen to them and still be legal. So what's going on? Well, one unnamed league source thinks the increased drag might be due to higher seams in the baseball. Higher seams increase air resistance, which kills the carry. Pirates veteran outfielder Andrew McCutchen says he's heard the same thing straight from an MLB rep. So the seams are higher this year, and no, nothing can be done about it, shockingly, until the offseason. But hey, they're working on it. Of course, this sounds familiar because it seems like this type of thing pops up every single year. 2017, they found that the balls had thicker seams, creating rounder shapes and less drag, and look at that, there was a huge home run surge. 2019, Justin Verlander accused baseball of juicing the balls after the league bought Rawlings, the manufacturer of the ball, and sure enough, there was a home run spike again. 2021, baseball admitted to de-juicing the ball, but mixes in old ones with new ones during the season. 2022, another study finds 3 different balls were used, but baseball denies it. Last year, pitchers swear the ball is juiced again. The data says it isn't, but the trust at this point is so eroded, nobody believes baseball anymore. That's the one constant. And that's the problem. We're not dealing with an isolated incident. We're dealing with a pattern. And after a while, the pattern tells you something. So you're left with one of 2 options. One, baseball is intentionally altering the baseballs to manipulate outcomes. Maybe it's to juice offense. Maybe it's to suppress it. Maybe it's weather dependent. But it's on purpose. Or the other option is that baseball is so clueless about its own product that it can't control the consistency of the most important piece of equipment in the sport. Either way, the takeaway is the same. Baseball really can't be trusted. And it feels like this is a league that's gone to war over performance-enhancing drugs, but when the balls are juiced, no hearings, no outrage, no Congress, just vague statements about seam height and manufacturing tolerance. Because juicing the baseballs isn't as big an issue. It doesn't show up on blood tests, and it doesn't embarrass the league the way steroid use did. If a guy hits 50 home runs and no one asks any question because the ball is flying all over the place, well, that's good for business. Fans like offense, TV deals like offense, everybody likes offense. But if the numbers tank and the games get slower, well, the pressure's on, and hey, why not tweak the ball a little bit? And it's easy to see how we got here. With all the data overload in baseball, MLB knows how much offense affects ratings. They know length of games is important. They know what sells. So they don't look at it as changing the ball. They're just optimizing it. So players don't trust the league. That's been clear for years. Pitchers don't trust the ball that they're throwing. Hitters don't trust the ball they're hitting. Fans don't trust what they're watching. And that's the most dangerous thing of all, because once the public thinks the games are being manipulated, that the outcome is being engineered, you're not watching baseball, you're watching a lab experiment. The good news is nothing's going to change, because if there's one thing we have learned through all of this is that Major League Baseball doesn't care if you trust them. They care if you show up. They care if you watch. They care if you buy tickets and jerseys and streaming packages. As long as the money keeps coming in, they'll keep doing what they're doing quietly in the shadows behind the curtain. So get used to it, baseball fans. Don't expect honesty, don't expect accountability, and definitely don't expect any consistency. All right, the NBA draft is in the books, and of course, everyone has their instant draft grades. Well, I only have one. And I will be honest with you, I was not living and dying with the NBA draft this year. I was not locked in. I'm not going to pretend that I'm some sort of draft guru when it comes to basketball. But as a fan, I can detect terrible franchise process, terrible franchise strategy. And there's one team that is head and shoulders above everyone else, and you really don't even need to know the players involved. Let me paint you a picture. You have a franchise that just went 21-61. You finished 18 games out of the final playoff spot in a loaded Western Conference. Your franchise player, Zion Williamson, has averaged 35 games per season in his career. And what do? You trade next year's first-round pick unprotected to move up in the first round to pick 13. That, of course, is the New Orleans Pelicans. So you don't even need to know who the Pelicans drafted this year to know they had a bad draft, because that is a terrible process. That is not having a plan. Plans involve more than just 1 year. This is not about team building. This is like Tarzan swinging from vine to vine, hoping you don't crash into a tree. And with the way this franchise has been operated in the past, and the decision they made on draft night, that tree is coming up fast. So they're gambling huge, not on a sure thing, but on better health from Zion Williamson. That's the first part of this process that is flawed. This is a guy who has played 29 games, 0 games, 61 games, and 24 games the past 4 seasons. That's the guy you're betting to keep you from handing maybe a top 5 pick to Atlanta next year. So this is a team that is completely built on hope. Hope that Derek Queen and Jeremiah Fears turn into franchise-changing players. That Jordan Poole all of a sudden takes this huge step forward. And that Zion magically can stay healthy. And if that doesn't work with Zion, well, hey, no biggie. You can just hit the reset button. Great. Except you've just traded away your unprotected first-round pick next year to Atlanta. And here's the kicker. Next year's draft is apparently loaded. Again, I'm not a draft guru, but unlike this past one, which everyone was openly saying was one of the weaker drafts in recent memory after the first couple of picks, 2026 is expected to have multiple high-end prospects, legitimate difference makers. So what do the Pelicans do? They decide this is the moment to give away an unprotected pick. It is absolute insanity. So for a franchise that has made its living on bad decisions and bad luck and bad management, I guess you have to tip your cap to Joe Dumars for being aggressive. That is a change. But bold doesn't equal smart. And when the margin for error is this thin and your ceiling, your best case scenario is maybe a play-in spot, maybe the 8th seed. You know, I think about the job of a professional general manager in any sport. It's incredibly difficult, right? So many parts of the job out of your control, so many aspects of team building to focus on. It must be impossible. That's what I think. And then I see something this dumb and short-sighted, and then I wonder, you know what? Maybe it's not that hard. So we've finally gotten to the point of the baseball season where most major league teams have played their 81st game. So the halfway point of the baseball season. And let's talk about the baseball free agent class from this past offseason. And let's be honest, it is looking more like a minefield than a gold rush. It should be a reminder every year, finding value in free agency is harder than it seems. So let's take a look at some of the biggest deals of the offseason. Of course, the number one deal, Juan Soto, the crown jewel. And to his credit, after a rough start, Juan Soto is looking like Juan Soto again. He's hit, he's adjusted, he's doing things that justify that massive contract. Career OPS plus of 160, he's at 157 for the season, so no complaints there. After that, the next highest contract in the offseason, Corbin Burns. How's he doing? Done for the season. Tommy John surgery. Was he making 6 years, $210 million? Yikes. The Dodgers with Roki Sasaki. He's back in the minors dealing with more injuries. He's been ineffective in the majors. Looks like a real project there. Blake Snell, another Dodger, hurt again. Shoulder inflammation. No word on when he's going to be back. Alex Bregman with the Red Sox was having a good season, but hurt. Hamstrings, been out for the last few weeks. Maybe he comes back and picks right up where he left off, but maybe not. Anthony Santander with the Blue Jays, absolutely miserable. 5 years, $92 million, an OPS plus of 62. Again, league average is 100. He's 40% worse than league average and is making millions of dollars. Willie Adames with the Giants has been a total bust, hitting 200, an OPS plus of 80. Jack Flaherty at last check was flirting with an ERA of almost 5. How about some of the smaller deals? Tyler O'Neill or Christian Walker. How about that sneaky value, right? Yeah, not so much. Now, there have been some success stories. Max Fried has been a godsend for the Yankees. Pete Alonso's been more good than bad. Clay Holmes has quietly solidified things for the Mets. Gleyber Torres has had a surprisingly strong year for the Tigers, so it's not all bad. But here's the point. Every offseason, we rush to crown the winners of free agency. Who spent the most? Who landed the big names? Who went for it? And more often than not, those teams don't win the offseason. They lose the regular season because of those moves. Again, you're looking to buy value. And the more expensive the price tag, the harder it is to find value. You want to find a player who overproduces his contract. So even Juan Soto, he's putting up Juan Soto numbers, but is he overproduced? I don't think so. It's not sexy, but teams that sit tight, develop talent, and make targeted moves end up looking smart, not the ones that back up a Brinks truck just to win the back page. And look, fans love action. I want my team to go out there and spend some money, but just because you spent money doesn't mean you got better. And more often than not, chances are you didn't make a big signing, you made a bigger mistake. All right, that is going to do it for another edition of Gordon Damer on Sports. If you've not done it already, what are you waiting for? Hit that subscribe button. If you like the episode, please do me another favor. Share it with a friend. Check out my website, GordonDamer.com. And we will be back next week with a fresh edition of Gordon Damer on Sports.